Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this spectacular edition of the NSLP Monthly Webinar. Let's get started by going over the agenda. So first, we're going to talk about verification. Next, we're going to mention administrative reviews for this school year. Then Kat is going to touch upon procurement. Cambria will discuss PEBT, and TJ will talk about USDA foods. So with verification, the report is going to open up in My Idaho CMP this Friday. On the lookout for an informational email coming soon via broadcast email. Just want to make sure that everybody is aware that if you received applications prior to October 1st, you have to complete the verification report. And if you didn't, you still have to complete the verification report. So I just want everyone to be aware, regardless of if you accepted applications prior to October 1st, you have to complete the report no matter what. So everybody has to do it. Administrative reviews. So we have completed a few administrative reviews for this school year. However, after seeing just how much of a burden this has been on food service directors, we know that there's still school closures. You guys are still having to pivot, lots of staffing issues. And so the Superintendent Yarbari here has decided to postpone all remaining ARs for this school year to hopefully give you all some relief and lift that burden off of your shoulders. For those of you that are working with CNR currently, we are asking for you to continue to work with them, complete any corrective action, and then please, halt any work that you've been doing on any of the modules for us in My Idaho CMP. And because that we have postponed these reviews, we're going to be working on some technical assistance opportunities for all food service directors. So that's something that we're going to be focusing on, switching gears, and we will notify all directors once we have some technical assistance opportunities available to you all. And with that, I will turn it over to Kat for procurement.
Thank you, Jessica. All right, much like the ARs, the procurement reviews are paused. I know a few of you I've completed, so you won't see me for 5 years, but I will resume in August 2022. So any information that you've already uploaded, I will just be able to use that. I will be creating another, well, there's already a procurement training, but I'm going to go a little more in depth as to what's necessary. A lot of people are confused as to what they need for their procurement review, mostly your policies, your code of conduct, and then there's a list you'll need to fill out for all your vendors, and that's what we use to determine which vendors we would look at further. So no worries, August 26th, 2022, don't upload any other information. And as you see on there, you should already have board procurement policies and a code of conduct. And generally, I can go out and look on your district website and find them. Not always are they updated, but that's a good jumping off point for me to look at. So federal regulations for school nutrition procurement are rules. They are not guidelines, and following them is not optional. So you must do procurement reviews. When we approach you to do a review, it's because it's part of our job and we have to do it. And per 2 CFR, you can see section 200.318. That's where you'll find all the procurement. The SFA must use its own documented procurement procedures when procuring goods for the school meal programs. Now, I've seen a lot of people use the co-op, has really good templates, and people use those templates. Just be sure if you're going to do that, you have permission, but that you also make sure it specifies your SFA. Don't leave language in there pertaining to the co-op or to anyone else's name. It must pertain to your district, and you must be responsible for that. All the documentation has to be in your name, and it must be enforceable. So procurement for emergency purchasing, that is something that's happening right now. So a non-competitive procurement, that's a federal rule. So we were told it does not require a waiver. Generally, when you have a sole source or an emergency purchase, you have to have it approved by the state agency first. But right now, during the pandemic, you don't have to have approval from us. There's no limitation on the purchase method, but remember, documentation is important. So if we come in and do a review and ask you, well, why did you use this method? Why did you go out and buy these items? You'll have some sort of documentation for us to look at. You must attempt to use proper procurement. You are able to go and get a contract for 1 year. However, this is only good for the pandemic. So as soon as the pandemic winds down, hopefully, so we'll be able to go back to using the proper procurement methods, which means going out to bids. And again, I have document everything. A memo came out October 15th talking about procurement. It's a really great FAQ and it has some good answers in there. So if you haven't seen that, I believe we sent it out in a broadcast email, but go out and look at that one and it may answer some questions for you. Okay, so this is one of the examples that we were given when you document your emails from your distributor. That's a really good thing to have to keep on file with why you're using an emergency purchase. So perhaps the load was canceled or delayed, items weren't available. So when the truck rolled in, you didn't get the items you were expecting, the load is shorted. So those are good reasons. And if you can have it in writing in an email, that's a really good thing to print out and keep in your files. So proper procurement for Buy American. So there is an exception form that's out there. Oh, I'm sorry, I am a slide ahead of myself. This is USDA Foods. Okay, so for those of you who are looking at the new Gold Star Foods and Northwest Distribution Ordering System, we realize this is a new system and we found that some of the language hasn't been updated to what the SFAs here in Idaho are used to using. So a direct delivery item is formally a brown box, but we've noticed in Gold Star that it's still listing it as brown box. And then your USDA further processed foods, make sure when you're looking in there, you're not doing a broad line. So I think, TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, when they have the USDA food further processed, it says broad line.
It says broadline
further process.
Right, and then broadline commercial.
Right, so please make sure when you're doing your further process that you're choosing the one that says broadline further process. They do have a commercial line and that is also broadline, so make sure you're using the correct one. And then on there it says you must have a contract with Gold Star Foods or Northwest Schools in order to procure items commercially. So if you're looking for, let's just say, chicken nuggets, you don't have any more pounds, there's nothing available, you can look on there and see, oh, well, commercially they have chicken nuggets, I'll just go ahead and get them there. If you don't have a contract and you haven't procured properly, you can't do that. So it may be convenient, but that's not allowable. So make sure you're looking at your contracts. Now we'll talk about Buy American. At this time, there is no waiver for Buy American, but as you know, there's 2 exceptions you can use if an item is not produced in a sufficient quantity or if the cost for a domestic item is significantly higher. And there is an exception form. This form has always been there and it's always been a form that you should be using. It's in download forms. And so one thing we've been hearing about is the SFA is responsible for filling out the exception form. This is not on the vendor. The only thing the vendor needs to provide to you is backup for where the non-domestic item came from and what the cost is. There is a USDA website, it's the AMS website that the vendor can look at, but you can also look at that. And then the vendor should be letting you know ahead of time if the items they're going to be bringing are non-domestic, so you have a choice to decline the item or accept it. Again, if you're going to accept it, please fill out the exception form and keep that on file. This is what the exception form looks like in download forms. Procurement is in section 18. I think I have a copy of the form in that section as well. And then note that there's frequency of exceptions. So annually, you know, bananas are not Buy American or pineapple. So you can fill out this form one time for the year, click it as an annual exception, and then you're covered for your bananas. A seasonal exception, perhaps tomatoes or grapes are not available in the US at a certain time of year. So you can choose a seasonal exception. And then there's also a one-time exception for an item that you would need to fill out. And again, keep all of these on file so that when the team comes in and does an AR, you'll have all the documentation you need. So that's all I have for procurement and Buy American. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me. I have sent letters out to I sent an email out to those of you who were scheduled for reviews, letting you know that they have been put on pause. I was going to launch another 18 reviews in January, but since these are paused until 2022, you were not notified, but you will be hearing from me in 2022. So thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is Cambria. We just wanted to remind you guys that uploads for school years 2020-2021 PEBT, those uploads will end on November 8th. So please have all of the address changes uploaded by 8 a.m. On November 8th. After November 8th, we are going to transition our system into summer PEBT. I will be sending out an email with more information on how to upload for summer. And we just wanted to remind everyone that all schools are eligible for summer PEBT benefits, regardless of any school closures during school year 2020-2021. So even if your school did not close during last year for COVID, you are still eligible for PEBT for this summer. So make sure that you're looking for that email on instructions for how to upload.
Hi, everyone. This is TJ, and I wanted to go ahead and cover a couple of things that we've heard about from folks. So let's first talk about the $1.5 billion that we all heard about, or many people heard about back in the end of September. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack made the announcement about a very comprehensive USDA investment package and dedicated up to $1.5 billion. The announcement was not really clear about how that money would be utilized or made available to schools. All we know is that it is intended to provide assistance to help schools respond to the supply chain disruptions. So we know that there are some staffing concerns. We know that people are really struggling with certain products. The pricing on products has gone up. We have some delays in products. So what that actual relief will look like, we have not yet actually heard. But essentially, the key points of that particular investment package and the up to $1.5 billion intended to go to schools is for school food professionals to help meet these extraordinary challenges that we just discussed, the foods and the staffing. And then also it's intended to provide some relief since the circumstances continue to remain unpredictable. We don't know how long the repercussions from the pandemic will last. And then we also are fully aware that the supply chain for not only food and labor has been stressed and disrupted. We don't know how long that will continue as well. And then, of course, the funds are supposed to be used to support procurement of agriculture commodities, which implies that in some fashion that will go to USDA Foods. But without the exact details, we just simply don't know. So before we close this webinar today, we will be taking a poll, because what I'd like to ensure we at the state agency know is if we have any opportunity to discuss with stakeholders about how the $1.5 billion is rolled out, I want to make sure that that information comes from your level. You're the ones that need the relief, so we really want to make sure that we're speaking on your behalf. So we'll get to that poll momentarily. However, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about an issue that has come up for us. And Kat actually discussed a little bit about the Gold Star system, and we know that there are some challenges with that. but I just want to cover, this is really basic inventory management. So we had a situation, a scenario where there was an individual who let us know they were expecting their beef shipment, and it was intended to arrive on October 15th, 2021. That's what was entered for the requisition date. We know that there were many, many users of WebSCM that also requisitioned cases of that particular beef that should have arrived on October 15th. However, as has been discussed multiple times, we have to really be aware of supply chain issues. So this particular person went into the inventory release software system, knowing that they had requisitioned the beef to be delivered October 15th, and there was no beef available for release. It's really critical to pay attention to the solutions that are available for you. First and foremost, we need everyone to really, during this time frame, read all the USDA Foods broadcast emails. This particular situation was announced in our September USDA Foods update because we had already learned from USDA prior to the October 15th delivery date that the product was going to be delayed. So in those broadcast emails from the USDA Foods team, we will clearly identify any products that we learn of that have been canceled or were delayed. And so this particular product we had mentioned, we knew would be delayed, and it's delayed until a November 15th delivery.
May I also say that they actually come from Brian?
Yes, those emails come from Brian. However, he does use the USDA Foods team email address. So please watch for those emails. It's really, really important during all of this supply chain. We're trying to manage making sure that you have the information you need in advance of learning in this, like this particular scenario, that the product isn't there. Make sure you're reading all WebSCM notifications. If you have a portion of a truckload of beef, 1,000 cases, and you are expecting 20 cases of that, WebSCM will push out a notification to you about your 20 cases and what the status change of those cases are. And in that particular WebSCM notification, it included to this particular user that their shipment was going to be delayed. So those are two opportunities to know in advance of logging in and expecting product to be available. But there's also a third solution. In the new Gold Star system, there is a USDA live inventory report. If you click on that link, it will show you all of the products that are yours to claim. In other words, those products are living in a warehouse, whether it be Americold, because it's a frozen product, or Northwest, because it's a dry storage or a cool storage item. So please really, really rely on all of these forms of communication, particularly now. What we don't want to hear is someone sort of caught that now they're having to change menus because they weren't paying attention to those notifications, when in fact they could have made those changes back in September, knowing that their product wasn't going to be arriving. So please just watch for that information. And then of course we understand that it's difficult because the inventory release software system has changed. We used to look at that system in a different way. It was set up differently. It was managed through our contract with Northwest Distribution. But with the merger of Northwest Distribution and Gold Star Foods, the system has in fact changed. So we did the courtesy of making sure that you still have access to the inventory release software system. We didn't change anything about what we call it. The tile is still on the USDA Foods USDA Foods and Processing web page, as the same purple tile it's always been, titled IRIS, Inventory Release Software System, because that is the functionality of the Gold Star system. Nothing really has changed, but it does look different. And we understand that change can be complicated. So we wanted to just point out a few things that we've learned as we have sort of gone into the system, gotten a little bit of training on it, and realizing some of the differences that might make it easier for you folks to manage your inventory. So first, know there are two types of orders in the Gold Star Foods Inventory Release Software System. There is a USDA tab, and there is a Broadline tab, and Kat referenced this earlier. So when you click on USDA, that encompasses all of your USDA Foods direct delivered items. Again, what do we mean by direct delivered? Those are our minimally processed products, like your number 10 cans of legumes or vegetables, the frozen berry cups, strawberry cups. They are minimally processed items. However, Broadline, that term encompasses USDA Foods further processed and commercial items. So when you click on Broadline, there's a drop-down arrow, and you have to use the drop-down arrow and select further processed to then get in to release your USDA Foods further processed items. Now, we at the state agency have brought to the attention of Gold Star that they are still using some terminology in their system that we need to have changed, because we are very adamant that we have trained for years to use the proper terminology. So it may be causing some confusion for some of the newer users even when you see terminology that doesn't make sense to you, like a brown box or a commodity. Those are not the terms we use, and those are not the terms we will use. So we're going to have some system changes so that it really mirrors the type of training that you receive and the information that you receive in you see in WebSCM, so that there is no disconnect on what these products actually entail. But to Kat's point earlier, if you see access to commercial items, please make sure that you are one of those SFAs that has a vendor contract with Gold Star Tools for Schools. Those commercial products must be properly procured. And that's, for me, as the state agency responsible for managing inventory, it is a frustration. I do not want people accidentally choosing commercial products that are not theirs to choose. So we just want to make you aware that we are working with the system at large to ensure that the system represents your USDA Foods first and foremost. That is the intention for the system for the state agency management of USDA Foods. And then, of course, we just wanted to make some folks aware. This came to our attention. Fortunately, we had a few folks that said, hey, I know, because I ran my WebSCM requisition status report, that I actually ordered raw bulk material in WebSCM back in February, but I can't find it in the Gold Star system. It's not there for me, so I can't release or order any of my further processed items. So fortunately, we were able to go in and look as an administrator and determine that, in fact, that particular user was correct. So what we learned is that Gold Star had actually missed important permissions for that particular user, and it's come to our attention, others as well, so that they hadn't clicked the box to let the user see their raw bank material pounds so that they could order their further processed products. So if you are a user that may be experiencing the same issue, I'm asking you to first check WebSCM and make sure that you actually did requisition pounds, because that's information at your fingertips. If you did requisition raw bulk material pounds for any number of products, it could be chicken, the material code 100103. It could have been raw material pork or beef or eggs, any of those products. If you requisitioned and you're not being able to release them or order them, please notify our team at the USDA Foods team at fde.idaho.gov email, because it's really, really important that we make sure Gold Star gets these resolved. I have asked if they have a report to be able to generate users' information, and apparently that hasn't been built yet. So we're going to have to peck at this one person at a time. But please make sure that we're aware. But do your due diligence and make sure you actually ordered pounds first. And then the other thing that's really come to our attention is in this new system, you have the ability to set up order guides. And what we really like to make sure that you do is reach out to your Gold Star customer service representative. If you don't know who that individual is, shoot me an email, because that information I do have at my fingertips. We would like to have our users have the ability to set up their order guides based on the raw bulk materials they ordered, because you can choose which products you want to order with those raw bulk materials. So what do I mean by that? Let's say that you know you requisitioned a bunch of pounds of Tyson chicken, and in your particular district, the product that you really use the most are a handful of the available Tyson products that we offer. You can put those particular products in your order guide so that when you go in, those are the products that you're going to order rather than the Tyson products that your students maybe don't accept as well. So we really want to make sure that we help you build out the capacity of the system so that it makes it much easier for you at the end of the day when you go in and place your orders for your further processed items. And then finally, let's go ahead and talk about this poll before we launch it. This is what I was referencing earlier. When it comes to the $1.5 billion, we really don't know what's going to happen yet. I do have some anticipation based on conversations with other colleagues at state agency level that likely we will see a chunk of that money released as entitlement. So we don't know if it will be entitlement directly to SFAs or if it will be given to the state with an opportunity to order bonus product. So I would prefer to be set up for success in advance of the notification that here you go, here's the money. So what I'd like to know from you folks is really what are the top 3 categories where you would spend additional entitlement money if you had it available to you. And I need to be really clear that some of the categories listed below, they include both direct delivery product and further processed products. For instance, the fruit category, you could order number 10 cans of fruit, or you could order bulk raw pounds of apples and then have it sent to National Food Group for processing into applesauce cups. So when you think about these categories, pay particular attention. And I really only want you to pick your top 3 based on your usage, your pricing, what's impacting you the most, and again, forecasting, knowing what you currently have seen either canceled or delayed in delivery, and what you anticipate needing to be able to ride out the rest of the year. So with that information, we're going to go ahead and launch that poll. And we'll give you folks a few minutes, and then I'm going to use this information to report up to USDA and say, hey, we're hoping that we hear something soon, and this is what Idaho would like to see happen with those funds. Okay, it looks like we are at about 68% responses. If you, we did hear from someone in the chat that they're not able to see the poll. If you are impacted by not being able to see the poll, it's probably because you have a pop-up blocker on your screen that's currently deactivating the ability for any pop-up. I don't know if you have a quick moment to resolve that, but if you've been impacted and you want to participate in the poll, please do not hesitate to send an email to USDA Foods team at sde.idaho.gov and report to us your top 3 categories. So we'll leave this up for just another minute. It looks like we've got about 77% participation. And honestly, if you don't know right now, but you think about it and maybe look at what you've got available, what your menus look like for the coming months, and you want to weigh in, we are happy to take that information at any point that you have it available to you. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and close the poll. And again, please email us. We're happy to hear from you. And also, I just can't help but thank you all enough. We know that you guys are seriously, your batteries are running on empty. We're hearing from a lot of you. We're hoping that some of our efforts to hold these webinars consistently, to postpone administrative reviews, our team is working diligently to try and come up with a plan for some targeted technical assistance based on some information we've learned through the reviews we did conduct, some of the information we've received from new food service directors, some information we've learned about the Gold Star system. We really want to be there to service you guys. So in spite of everything, please know that we at the state agency really, really genuinely appreciate everything that you do. You are still our heroes. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what you're doing. So please know that we're here for you. We'll do all that we can to advocate on your behalf. And let us know if there's anything else we can do beyond what we've done today to meet your needs currently and long-term. And then, of course, we always want to make sure that we offer an opportunity for questions. We do have some Q&A that is currently open, and so we'd like to address those now while we still have time on this webinar.
The first question we received says, can you clarify that PEBT benefit eligibility for summer is just for the schools that have accepted free and reduced applications prior to the beginning of the school year? And the answer is students that were eligible through free and reduced applications or direct certification during school year 20-21 are eligible to receive summer PEBT. And this will include all students who submitted an application up until the first day of school for school year 21-22. Next question, do parents go somewhere and apply for it? If you could clarify whether this was for PEBT, I'm assuming it is. Parents are not able to apply for summer PEBT benefits. Next one, so how do we upload the PEBT? This information will be emailed out to everybody in a broadcast email. How do I know how much of the bulk processed I have left? Last year, it would say the amount of cases I had to order, but on the Gold Star system, it's blank for me. So it's a shot in the dark how much I have left.
Ashley, that's a really good question. Thank you for that. So that's one of the upgrades that we'd like to see in the Gold Star system. I've already promoted a build around that to Gold Star. What we'd like to see is a calculator. So let's say you know that you have 100 pounds of raw bulk material pork, and you know that you want to order meatballs with that pork. If you clicked on the pork product, it would provide a calculator for you so that you could enter in the number of pounds you have available, and it would spit out a result of cases. Now, that's not currently in the works, but what you can do is you can use the SEPDS, so that's the summary end product statement that is provided with each product. Though that documentation is actually available in 2 locations. It's available in Gold Star, and it's also available on our webpage, on the USDA Foods and Processing webpage. If you go to our Further Process tab, then we have that information made available to you. So you can do your own calculations because it will show you how much raw bulk material is drawn down for each case of product. So it's a very simple equation. If you know you have 100 pounds of pork and you know what product you want to order, you would divide by the number of pounds, and it will tell you how many cases you can actually result totally from that. And if you, that's one of the technical assistance pieces that I think the state agency would really like to work on. If you need further clarification on that, I do know that Gold Star Foods has customer service representatives available so that you can contact them.
Okay, next question. With labor needs being more and less help available, do you think any of the money will go to support labor costs, including overtime for employees?
So this is a really good question too, and short of my crystal ball telling me how they're going to allow us to allocate the funds, so conceivably, if a portion of the 1.5 up to, and let me be really clear, the announcement said up to, so it could be anywhere between 0 and 1.5 billion, which is a lot of money split across a lot of states. But if the money is, even a portion of it, given to USDA Foods, then we'll use that for procuring USDA Foods. But if also a portion of that is delivered directly to SFAs, then your ability to use those funds would depend on what's allocable and reasonable, and it would go to the child nutrition programs. Is the expectation based on the press release that we received? But again, until we get more clarification, I honestly can't say. My assumption would be yes, because it's intended to assist with all of the different issues that were outlined in the press release. But as soon as I know more, you guys will be the first to hear about it. I also wanted to address some of the information in the chat because I appreciate that. You know, we're not sure what will be released. Oftentimes, if it is only released for available bonus products. So what we do know is USDA right now is working with the ag market, the American Marketing Services, to work with growers because they too have been impacted by the pandemic. So if they're working with growers and they are able to meet product based on bonus or available produce, then I would anticipate we would take a chunk of that money and also allow users to be able to allocate to the DoD program. So thank you for weighing in on that because I didn't put that in the poll and that would have been a really good response. So we'll definitely keep your input on that as well for our responses to USDA.
I just want to clarify, PEBT has nothing to do with the applications for the 21-22 school year. I think I know where the confusion is. There is summer PEBT, and that eligibility looks at applications that were received prior to the first day of the 21-22 school year. So if somebody was deemed eligible during last school year as free or reduced, or perhaps they turned in an application before the first day of school for this year, they qualify for summer PEBT benefits. For school year 21-22, to qualify, the school has to experience a closure of 5 consecutive days or longer, and children are deemed eligible if they are determined as free or reduced. That eligibility can come from either last school year's eligibility, or if they didn't fill out a free and reduced application last year, they can fill out an application for this year to figure out what their determination would be. So hopefully that makes sense. It is a little confusing because there is different criteria between summer and school year 21-22. So far, we haven't had any sponsors experience a closure of 5 consecutive days or longer, so we haven't had anybody be eligible. The other important piece to consider is that for school year 20-21, benefits could have been retroactive. So somebody could have filled out an application in May and received benefits from the month of October, January, February, any months that previously occurred prior to May. However, for school year 21-22, that retroactive benefit will not occur. So if you have a closure that occurred in September and a parent completes an application in November, they aren't going to receive retroactive benefits from that closure in September. So again, very different, lots of similarities, lots of differences between determining eligibility and who receives what, depending on what school year, whether it's summer PEBT, but hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. If we aren't running a summer food program, are students still able to get summer PEBT? Absolutely. It is a set amount that each child would receive. Doesn't matter if you had a summer program running or not. Doesn't matter if you did and it was SSO or SFSP.
But they still have to have an application.
Right, they just have to be deemed as free or reduced prior to the first day of school, and that's it. Summer PEBT doesn't look at school closures at all. So as long as they were determined as free or reduced prior to the first day of school, they receive that benefit. Should we be actively collecting applications? This was the hot topic of last month's webinar. And it's up to you. If you, I guess none of us can foresee school closures happening, right? So we just really want to caution you that if a school closure were to occur and the school does end up closing for more than 5 consecutive days and you didn't accept applications prior to then, you may have a field day with parents being mad after the fact, learning that even if they fill out an application, they're no longer going to receive those benefits because they didn't complete the application prior to the closure. So again, we're a local control state. This is a decision that you and your administrators should be tackling. It's completely up to you guys on what you want to do. We always say our crystal ball isn't working very well. We have no idea what's going to happen. You know, back in June, positivity rates were below 5%, and we all thought we were at the end of this. And then we ended up skyrocketing to be the state with the highest positivity rate in the nation. So you never know. We numbers are trending down, could be good for the rest of the year, or another variant can pop up and we'll be back to where we started. So again, I just encourage you guys to have conversations with your administration, because if you decide not to accept applications, just be aware of the potential consequences or reactions that may occur from parents not being fully informed beforehand.
And to add to that, I mean, there's unfortunately neither side of the coin is really beneficial in terms of how it impacts child nutrition, because also if you accept applications, you must go through the certification and benefit issuance process. And we have advised some school districts to be really cognizant that you still have the option for verification for cause on any application that's submitted. So it adds additional burden if you're already in a situation where you don't have staff to provide meals to students currently, or you're struggling with all the other aspects of managing the nutrition program, and then all of a sudden you have an influx of applications. So unfortunately, the burden really is on child nutrition in terms of the PEBT program. So just be aware of make sure that your administrators are also aware of the impacts on your program.
Next question is, if we are not accepting applications this year, will that affect students' eligibility for summer PEBT next year? Again, what a, we have no idea. For all we know, PEBT will be here to stay. I don't know. I mean, it is called pandemic EBT, but who knows? I don't know. Perhaps if we do have summer PEBT next year, they might have completely different eligibility criteria that we're looking at. And, you know, I wish I had an answer to that one, but
Also,
I don't know.
keep in mind that children that are categorically eligible, directly certified, it's really important you're running those reports, because those kids are previously determined as categorically eligible. Those are the ones that we know are going to receive benefits absolutely unequivocally if in fact PEBT is extended. So make sure you're running those direct certification reports.
Next question. I thought information was coming from the SDE on wording for informing families on completing applications. There actually is a letter for parents that is edited to note that your school district is operating the summer of this school year. It's under download forms, and that became available late August, I believe. And then the SDE also put out its public release as well in late August. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, but if not, let us know if you're talking about something different. If we start accepting applications now, how would the verification process look, since it's usually apps turned in before October 1st? You wouldn't have, I mean, you're only looking at those applications that came in before October 1st. So if you start taking applications now, you're going to complete your verification report as if you did not receive applications. Just remember, there's always verification for cause. So you start accepting applications and parents happen to know that the only reason they're completing an application is to get free money for PEBT, and you see something suspicious, you can still do verification for cause.
Yes, I know we've had this conversation many, many times in the past. You are a fiduciary of taxpayer dollars when you are looking at free and reduced applications. So please keep that in mind, because it's really important to hold people accountable.
All right. If you have any other questions that pop up and you don't catch us before the end of the webinar or before I exit, like I said, you guys know all of our contact information. Reach out to us. We are here to support you. Any questions that pop up, we are happy to answer if we know the answer. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will see you on the next one.